Hello and welcome to the latest video on my top 1000 countdown. I'm a machine, grinding them out. So this video we're going numbers 160 to 151. So fighter number 160 is multiweight champion Wilfred Benitez. Great defensive fighter that he was, El Radar. Benitez beat 6 world champions. He fought 133 rounds against champions, and he beat 3 Hall of Fame fighters, fighting 75 rounds against them overall. Wilfred Benitez had a total of 20 fights against rated fighters, and he scored 31 knockouts, 11 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 4 knockouts in the first round. Now Benitez was top 10 rated for a total of 9 years. He had the longest unbeaten run that ran to 39 fights, and Benitez was pound for pound rated for 3 years. Now he had 5 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 3 wins. He scored 2 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 1 win against a pound for pound number 1 fighter. And Wilfred Benitez's opposition fought rate comes in at 2 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 2 from 13. So Benitez had 11 fights against champions, including 7 wins, 4 loss, no draw, with 1 knockout. He had 5 fights against Hall of Famers, including 3 wins, 2 loss, no draw, with 0 knockouts. And Wilfred Benitez had a total of 10 world title fights, including 8 wins, 2 losses, no draws, and 5 title defences. So onwards we go to fighter 159. Okay, it's the great Filipino flyweight fighter Pancho Villa. Now Pancho Villa, who gained his name from a few people, beat 6 world champions. He fought a total of 239 rounds against champions, and Villa beat 3 Hall of Fame fighters individually, fighting 94 rounds against Hall of Famers. Now Pancho Villa had 19 fights against rated opponents, and he scored a total of 22 knockouts. 11 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 1 knockout in the first round. Pancho Villa was top 10 rated for a total of 2 years, and he had the longest unbeaten run that ran to 37 fights. Now Pancho Villa was pound for pound rated for 1 year in my all-time rankings, and he had 5 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 3 wins. He scored 0 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Pancho Villa's opposition fought rate comes in at 4 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 3 from 13. So Pancho Villa had 20 fights against champions, including 12 wins, 6 losses, 2 draws, and 2 KOs. He had 9 fights against Hall of Famers, including 4 wins, 5 loss, no draw, with 1 knockout. And Pancho Villa was unbeaten, in title fights, having 5 in total, with 5 wins and 4 title defences. So onwards we go to fighter number 158 on my countdown, and it is middleweight champion Gene Fullmer, who I think goes very underrated. Not only did he give Sugar Ray Robinson some tough fights, he also beat up Benny Kid Paret, and just generally mixed in really good company and scored many good wins. Gene Fullmer beat 4 world champions. He fought 148 rounds against champions, and Fullmer beat 2 Hall of Fame fighters, fighting a total of 138 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Now Gene Fullmer had 28 fights against rated fighters, and he scored 24 knockouts, 16 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 10 knockouts in the first round. Now Gene Fullmer was top 10 rated for a total of 9 years. He was pound for pound rated for 6 years in my all-time rankings. He also, I forgot to mention, had an unbeaten run of 29 fights. And Gene Fullmer had 14 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 7 wins. He scored 4 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 4 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Gene Fullmer's opposition fought rate comes in at 3 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 2 from 13. So Fullmer had 12 fights against champions. That included 6 wins, 3 losses, 3 draws, with 3 knockouts. He had 10 fights against Hall of Famers, including 4 wins, 3 losses, 3 draws, with 2 knockouts. And Gene Fullmer had a total of 13 world title fights, including 7 wins, 3 loss, 3 draw. And Gene Fullmer made 7 title defences. Yeah, big shout out, Random. Hope you're well, buddy. Hope you're good. So there's Gene Fullmer in 158. When we go to fighter 157, it's former lightweight champion Ad Wolgast. Now Ad Wolgast, beat 2 world champions. He fought 145 rounds against champions, and he beat 2 Hall of Fame fighters, fighting a total of 158 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Now Ad Wolgast had 1 fight against a rated fighter, obviously heavily reduced due to him being a pre-rating era fighter, and he scored 40 KOs, 13 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 4 in the first round. Now, Ad Wolgast was top 10 rated for 0 years, and he had a longest unbeaten run that ran to 37 fights. Ad Wolgast was also pound for pound rated for 2 years in my all-time rankings. Now, Wolgast had 13 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 4 wins. He scored 3 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Ad Wolgast had an opposition fought rate of 6 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 3 from 13. So Ad Wolgast had 12 fights against champions. That included 4 wins, 7 losses, 1 draw with 1 knockout. He had 13 fights against Hall of Famers, including 4 wins, 8 losses, 1 draw with 2 knockouts. And Ad Wolgast had 7 title fights, including 6 wins, 1 loss, no draw. And Ad Wolgast made 5 title defences. So from Ad Wolgast in 157, we go to fighter 156, okay, to a fighter I've always said is a very underrated featherweight, Battling Battaglino. Now, Battling Battaglino, okay, beat 9 world champions. He fought 135 rounds against champions. And Battaglino beat 6 Hall of Fame fighters individually, fighting 119 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. And Battaglino had 36 fights against rated fighters throughout his career. He scored 23 knockouts, okay, 15 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 6 knockouts in the first round. Battaglino was top 10 rated for a total of 4 years, and he had the longest unbeaten run of 12 fights. He did have a very tough career, Battling Battaglino. You know, when I was first researching him years ago, I was flabbergasted because, you know, when you come across a new fighter for the first time and you start looking at the resume and looking for them key names, looking for the accomplishments, I was just looking at a resume just glittered with top names. I really mean it. Very, very underrated featherweight, Battling Battaglino. Now, he was pound for pound rated for 2 years in my all-time rankings, and Battaglino had 15 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 9 wins. He scored 2 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 1 win against a pound for pound number 1 fighter. And Battaglino's opposition fought rate comes in at 4 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 3 from 13. So Battaglino had in total 14 fights against champions. That includes 10 wins, 4 losses, no draws with 3 knockouts. He had 11 fights against Hall of Famers, scoring 6 wins with 5 losses, no draws and 1 knockout. And he was unbeaten as a champion, okay, before going to higher weights. Battaglino had 6 world title fights with 6 wins and 5 title defences. Very underrated fighter, excellent resume he had. So on to fighter number 155. Okay, that fighter is sadly Rocky Marciano. Now, Marciano may benefit from a new rating system. Sorry, needed to cough there. So, yeah, he may benefit from a new rating system. We will see. Okay, but to me, Rocky Marciano, well, I'm not even going to go into it. Okay, Rocky Marciano beat 4 world champions, okay, he fought 54 rounds against champions, and he beat 4 Hall of Fame fighters, fighting 54 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Rocky Marciano had 14 fights against rated fighters, and he scored a total of 43 knockouts, 26 in 3 rounds or less, and 11 in the first round. Now, Marciano was top 10 rated for a total of 6 years, and he had the longest unbeaten run that ran to 49 fights, obviously his whole career. Okay, now Marciano was pound for pound rated for 5 years in my all-time rankings, and he had 6 fights against pound for pounders, obviously with 6 wins. He had 4 fights against pound for pound top 3 fighters, 4 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters, and 1 win against a pound for pound number 1 fighter. But here lies the tale in his opposition fought rate. It comes in at 2 from 18, and his opposition beat rate obviously 2 from 13. So Marciano had 6 fights against champions, including 6 wins with 5 knockouts. He had the same 6 fights against Hall of Famers because they are the same men, also thus scoring 5 knockouts. And Marciano was unbeaten in 7 world title fights, making 6 title defences. Now, some people play on nostalgia with Marciano, and I think he was a great fighter in his time. Would he have been unbeaten like he was in the 70s? I'm not 100% sure of that. Could he take clean hits off Ernie Shavers and not get hurt after being dropped by Moore and being dropped by Walcott? I'm not sure of that. Could he have took clean hits off Ron Lyle and Sonny Liston and all these fighters? I'm not sure of that. I'm pretty sure he would have probably beaten fighters like Jerry Quarry. He'd have bust Quarry's eyes up, I've no doubt, but it would have been a hell of a fight while it went on. Muhammad Ali, if he was moving, would have been a nightmare. Rocky would have had to chase him all night long. So, you know, he was a great fighter in his time. I'm not trying to reduce him or anything like that, but let's just leave it at that on him. He was a great fighter in his time. So Rocky Marciano is there in 155. Okay, when we go to fight at 154, yeah, big shout out to Paul Gaskell and Antonio Mosley in the chat. Yeah, we're just a bit strong on Marciano there, because I still get harassed on Facebook about Rocky Marciano. Oh, he's top 5 and all time, all weights and all this stuff. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry, I don't go there. I can't go there. He's a great fighter, no doubt. Great trainer, fanatical trainer, great fighter, will to win, resilience, everything. But I don't think he's top 5 all time, all divisions. So number 154 is Johnny Jadick, but I do think Marciano definitely will benefit from a new rating system. But, you know, I'll see when they're close to completion. So Johnny Jadick, okay, beat 2 world champions. He fought 125 rounds against champions. And he beat 2 Hall of Fame fighters, fighting 121 rounds against Hall of Famers. And unlike Marciano, he didn't have a dozen or so fights against rated fighters. Johnny Jadick had 61. He scored 16 knockouts in his career, 6 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 2 knockouts in the first round. And Johnny Jadick was pound for pound rated in my all-time rankings for 5 years. Now, Jadick had a longest unbeaten run that ran to 27 fights, and he was pound for pound rated for 1 year. He had a massive 25 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 6 wins. Jadick scored 4 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 3 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Johnny Jadick had a total opposition fought rate of 8 from 18, not 2, and 4 from 13. So Jadick had 14 fights against champions with losing record of 3 wins, 11 losses, no draws and 0 KOs. He has a similar, slightly less record against Hall of Famers with 13 fights overall, including 3 wins, 10 loss, no draw with 0 KOs. And Johnny Jadick had 2 title fights. Both of them were wins and he made 1 title defence. So unbeaten at title level, albeit a short run. So, on to fighter 153. Okay, this fighter I don't think deserves to go above Marciano, in my opinion. Okay, that's my personal opinion. I don't think Vince Dundee should be above Marciano. I think a number of other fighters above Marciano shouldn't be above him. But these ratings are not my personal opinion. So Vince Dundee, okay, beat 5 champions. He fought 188 rounds against champions, and he beat 3 Hall of Fame fighters, fighting a total of 149 rounds against Hall of Fame opponents. Now, Vince Dundee had a total of 36 fights against rated fighters. He scored 29 knockouts, 11 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 2 knockouts in the first round. Now, Vince Dundee was top 10 rated as a fighter for 6 years, and he had the longest unbeaten run that ran to a total of 45 fights. Now, Vince Dundee was pound for pound rated for 3 years, and he had 14 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 4 wins overall. He scored 2 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Vince Dundee's opposition fought rate comes in at 7 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 5 from 13. Now, Vince Dundee had 18 fights against champions, including 7 wins, 10 loss, 1 draw with 1 knockout. He had 14 fights against Hall of Famers, including 4 wins, 10 loss, no draw with 0 knockouts. And Vince Dundee had 5 title fights, including 3 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw and 2 title defences. So there's Vince Dundee in 153. You see, part of the problem why I remonstrate on Marciano, just to give Marciano a break, I'm not being hard on him. I loved watching videotape of him when I was younger, and he's a great fighter. But part of the reason why I sometimes get very defensive about what he and other fighters have accomplished is that you've got a fighter here, Vince Dundee, right, who was an excellent middleweight, fought nearly 40 fights against rated opponents, beat 3 Hall of Famers himself, you know, yes, suffered defeats, okay, had a lot of fights against pound for pounders, had an unbeaten run of 45 fights, was a champion, everything, and he gets 0 credit, okay. The things that Marciano's done get him elected to Pearly Gates, but you get a fighter like Vince Dundee who's beat multiple Hall of Famers himself, mixed in really tough company, he gets 0 credit, okay, from anybody, okay, and that is to me, oh, hello Antonio, yeah, I did shout you out, buddy. Marciano vs Chuvalo would have been the fight at the century. That would have been a bruising fight, because no matter how hard Marciano hit, Chuvalo didn't take steps backwards. Like Ali said, I hit him with kitchen sink and he wouldn't take a back step. And Ali, actually, because Muhammad Ali is not a big knockout puncher, but I think his speed and timing often would Scott. But when you actually, even though Ali was not a big knockout puncher, and this is one of those funny things in boxing, you've got Ernie Shavers, who by far, to me, hits way harder than Muhammad Ali. Okay, and this is one of the reasons, well, I'm going off track again, but I'll just get this point across. This is one of the reasons why I never listen to people just talk about the knockout record, because say, who are greatest punchers of all time? They'll say Ernie Shavers, Rocky Marciano, Joe Louis, Sonny Liston, Mike Tyson. They'll throw out all the normal names, Sam Langford, etc. Okay, but yet most of those guys don't have a better knockout record than Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali knocked out more Hall of Famers than them. He knocked out more rated opponents than virtually most of fighters people cite. So even though he didn't hit as hard, this is really bizarre. But if you look at it, it's true. If you look at Muhammad Ali's knockout record against Ernie Shavers and look at the quality of fighter they stopped or knocked out, Muhammad Ali has a way better knockout record against top opponents than Ernie Shavers does. But Ernie Shavers was the harder puncher. Oh yeah, do you know what? I'm going to cause my brain to go into a weird spasm and go into an alternate dimension. So I'll leave that there, because that is a huge debate right there. Because when you look at Joe Louis, great puncher, clinical, his timing, his precision, his patience, everything factored into his punches. Jack Blackburn trained him like a Trojan into a fighting machine. And I think that, you know, Joe Louis was one of the great heavyweight punchers, but did he knock out better fighters than Muhammad Ali? Even though I would say Joe Louis hits harder than Muhammad Ali, punch for punch. Yeah, it's a fascinating discussion, that, which is why in my ratings, when I factor a fighter's knockout record, it doesn't go on popularity or who people think are the biggest punchers. It goes on who they've knocked out, etc. Okay, so yeah, it's a funny one, that, but yeah, funny coincidence. You've got Shavers, who it's way harder than Muhammad Ali, but Ali has a way better knockout record against top level opponents. Anyway, there's Vince Dundee. I'm distracting, so let's get back on track. So yeah, I'll leave Vince Dundee there. I forgot where I was. Never mind. I'm nearly through my playlist, so I think I'm allowed to have a few little splurges of talk here or there. So, there's Vince Dundee in 153. Fighter number 152, okay, is a fighter that, if you wrote what this guy didn't know about boxing in a boxing ring, you could fit it on a postage stamp, okay? I'm really joking. Harry Lewis was a very experienced fighter, very capable fighter, and very dangerous fighter as well, as, was it Mike Ward would attest to. Now, when Ward went down first time, referee allowed it to continue, and he took a shot, a brutal punch from Harry Lewis, who timed it to perfection, tragically losing his life. Harry Lewis was a very dangerous fighter. Not, to me, one of the top all-time greats. Doesn't have one of the greatest resumes, but as a fighter, he was a very dangerous fighter. So Harry Lewis, okay, beat 3 world champions. He fought 62 rounds against champions, and he beat one Hall of Fame fighter, fighting 78 rounds against Hall of Fame opponents. Now, Harry Lewis had 0 fights against rated fighters, and he scored 47 knockouts, okay, 27 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 9 in the first round. Now, Harry Lewis was top 10 rated for 0 years, and he had the longest unbeaten run of 14 fights. Harry Lewis was pound for pound rated for 5 years, and he had a total of 19 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 4 wins. He scored 0 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Harry Lewis's opposition fought rate comes in at 7 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 4 from 13. Let me check Antonio's comment. Popularity, I couldn't agree more. Rocky Marciano is way more popular, I agree. I think of it like brands. Bigger the brand, more likely people will think the brand is actually better than other lesser known brands. Yeah, I can't fault you on that, Antonio, at all. I think it's very good logic you use in there, and it's very true. So Harry Lewis, okay, had 7 fights against champions, including 3 wins, 2 losses, 2 draws with 2 knockouts. Didn't have a great record against Hall of Famers in winning percentage with 9 fights, including 1 win, 6 loss, 2 draw with 1 knockout. Harry Lewis had 7 title fights with 5 wins, no loss, 2 draw, and 6 title defences. So there is the dangerous Harry Lewis. I can't remember exactly, so don't quote me, but if I remember correctly, the young fighter who lost his life against Harry Lewis, there was a bit of a scandal afterwards, because apparently he'd gone down, okay, and when he got up, everybody at ringside thought he cannot continue this fight, and the referee just waved it on, and Lewis came in with a brutal punch when the poor guy was already basically out on his feet. He could barely stand, and he took an absolute brutal punch, and it floored him, and there was no attempt to get up, pretty much. And you know, I always use instances like that. You know, I'm well aware that in boxing, it is a combat sport. It's may the best man win. But I always draw a line. I've had fierce disagreements with people on social media who say, well, Vitaly should have carried on against Chris Bird. I actually disagree, because the rotator cuff injury, was it, that Vitaly suffered? The doctors said if he'd have carried on fighting and using that arm, he could have been permanently disabled in his arm. Okay, so some people would rather him get permanently disabled, okay, never fight again, live a difficult life, not being able to do all the things he wants to do, you know, just for the sake of fighting 2 more rounds. I don't agree with that at all. I want every fighter to go in the ring and come out alive. Okay, I don't agree with this silly notion that you get where people pretend it's the Gladiator Coliseum in Rome, and it's a fight to the death. It's not. Okay, these guys are fighters, they're entertainers, but they also have to protect their health and their long-term health. So someone came at me saying Vitaly's he's a disgrace and should never be rated because he wouldn't continue against Chris Bird. And I said, well, what, would you rather him be disabled then? You'd rather him fight 2 more rounds and be disabled for the rest of his life, okay, just to satisfy your insane need of him not going out on his shield? I completely disagree with that, and I'll fly off handle at anybody who tells me I should accept that. I don't want any fighter to lose their life. I don't want any fighter to get permanently disabled for the sake of a few rounds. If Vitaly is told by a doctor this is a severe injury, you are at severe risk of long-term complications, and the doctor says I'd advise you not to continue, and he don't continue, I am going with the doctor. Okay, because the doctor cares more about Vitaly's health than obviously all these insane fans out there who say, well, no, he should literally die in ring. No. Now, the Roberto Duran thing with Sugar Ray Leonard, that were different, because he did quit. He wasn't landing punches, he wasn't getting anywhere, Leonard were mocking him and making a fool of him, so he quit. That's different. Okay? Duran wasn't facing long-term disablement by continuing, so that is a totally different kettle of fish. Okay, but in terms of fighters, and you know, the Harry Lewis situation is a perfect example. That young guy got up and he was in no state to continue, and Lewis, like a clinician like he is, came in and delivered a brutal singular punch that just leveled the kid. Okay, and tragically, the kid lost his life. And that is always a warning to people who, I do agree there are some stoppages nowadays that are too quick. Okay, and I think a fighter should always be given an opportunity. But sometimes fans complain when the fighter is clearly out on his feet. And we always have to watch out for the fighters. The fighters have to be protected because they are warriors. They will literally stand there, you know, the legs completely gone under them and still try and throw punches. But at some point, you know, they have to be protected from themselves as well. Anyway, rant over. Let's crack on. So, the final fighter of this video is one of the great flyweights, and I call him one of the great flyweight, Willie Davis, or as people call him, Wee Willie Davis. Now, Wee Willie Davis to me is one of the greatest Welsh fighters of all time. Willie Davis beat 6 world champions, okay, he fought 204 rounds against champions, and Willie Davis beat 3 Hall of Fame fighters individually, fighting 88 rounds against Hall of Famers. And Willie Davis against rated opponents had a total of 84. He had 84 fights against top 10 opposition, which is an insane number for a guy who never even had a title fight. Now, Willie Davis, okay, scored 8 knockouts, 2 inside 3 rounds or less, and 0 in the first round. Willie Davis was top 10 rated for 6 years. He had a longest unbeaten run of 20 fights, and he was pound for pound rated for 0 years. Now, Willie Davis, okay, had 7 fights against pound for pound as he was caught in that trap. Many flyweights didn't qualify into pound for pound list because, like I've said before, the fighters at welterweight, middleweight, heavyweight were just doing so much, it was hard for them to get in based on what they were doing. Which is why you see many flyweights have reduced numbers there. It's just a trend that I found happening through each year. So from the 7 fights against pound for pounders, Willie Davis scored 1 win. He scored 0 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Willie Davis's opposition fought rate comes in at 7 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 5 from 13. So Willie Davis had 22 fights against champions, including 9 wins, 11 losses, 2 draws with 0 knockouts. He had 9 fights against Hall of Famers, including 3 wins, 6 loss, no draw with 0 knockouts, and he had 0 title fights. Antonio Mosley, Benny Kidbrett, David Martin, many more examples. What happens when a boxer keep on going when they can't barely stand up? Yeah, it's very dangerous, and at that point a fight has to be stopped. Hey, I'm all for guys giving it their all. You know, I'm all for Corrales continuing against Castillo. Look at the turnaround there. You know, boxing history is filled with those great moments. But there are some times when a fight should be stopped, and we always have to make sure, you know, that the fighter is as safe as possible. But yeah, good examples, Antonio. So there's my latest video, 160 to 151. I am cooking over the last 4 days. I've done so many videos. I'll be back to work tomorrow, so they'll slow. But over the next 9-10 days, okay, the videos will keep coming. Every opportunity I get to do one, I will do one. I've only got 15 to do now. I'm looking to get them finished in that 9-day period. And then my countdown is done. I'll then take 3 or 4 days off to chill before coming back with career videos and me ring ranking graft videos as well. So yeah, there I am, more videos coming soon. Big shout out to everyone in chat. Please, all of you, have a good day, and I hope you're well. I'm Boxing Librarian. I'm out for now.